All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the absolutely wild 200-year evolution of the company behind, well, probably half the stuff sitting in your bathroom cabinet right now. We're talking mind-boggling scale, ruthless rivalries, and the really messy, complex reality of running a global mega business today.
So what does the toothpaste you used this morning have to do with a tiny candle shop from 1806? It's a great question, right? It's honestly an incredible story. How does a humble 19th century candle maker morph into this modern behemoth that literally reaches almost every single country on Earth? The journey from wax and wicks to modern oral hygiene? Well, it's packed with some pretty surprising twists.
To get the full picture, we're going to walk through 4 key areas today. First, humble beginnings. Second, mergers and rivalries. Third, the global brand portfolio. And fourth, ethics and environmental impact.
So, Section 1. Humble beginnings, from candles to collapsible tubes.
You know what's truly fascinating here is just how long they sold soap before they ever even touched toothpaste. Back in 1806, William Colgate, who was a devout Baptist by the way, started up a starch, soap, and candle business on Dutch Street in New York City. And it wasn't until 1873, that's almost 70 years later guys, that Colgate introduced its first aromatic toothpaste. And get this, they originally sold it in glass jars. Just imagine that. It actually took until 1896 for them to completely revolutionize oral care by putting their ribbon dental cream into the collapsible tube that we all use today.
And the story behind that tube brilliantly illustrates how random inspiration can literally change the world. See, an American dentist named Dr. Washington Sheffield had a son who was traveling in Paris. The son noticed artists squeezing their paint out of these little metal tubes, and boom, the idea was born. Colgate took that brilliant packaging concept and ran with it, creating the tube we still squeeze globally today. Oh, and a crazy historical side note? Those original collapsible toothpaste tubes? Yeah, they're actually made out of lead. No way, right?
We couldn't improve the product, so we improved the tube. That brilliant marketing slogan from 1908 just perfectly captures their early focus on packaging. By basically saying, hey, our toothpaste is already perfect, they leaned entirely into how convenient the new tube was. It was a really clever positioning strategy, and it drove massive, mass-market sales growth right at the dawn of the 20th century.
Moving on to Section 2, mergers and rivalries. The battle for the bathroom cabinet. The big takeaway here is how a massive mega merger smashed 3 of the oldest and biggest soap and perfumery companies in the US into one absolute powerhouse. Let's break it down. Over in Milwaukee, the B.J. Johnson Company created this wildly popular soap out of palm and olive oil, which they very cleverly named, you guessed it, Palmolive. In 1926, they merged with the Peet brothers. Then, just 2 years later in 1928, the rumors turned out to be true, and Palmolive Peet joined forces with the Colgate Company. By 1953, the whole shebang officially became the Colgate-Palmolive Company we know today.
Now you might be wondering, how on earth did they sell all this soap? Well, they quite literally helped invent the soap opera. To win over consumers, Colgate-Palmolive poured money into sponsoring daytime television and radio dramas. They were fiercely competing for the attention of American households, most famously back in the NBC medical drama The Doctors for nearly 2 straight decades, all the way from 1963 to 1982.
But look, it definitely wasn't a smooth ride to the top. The mid-century corporate warfare between Colgate-Palmolive and their arch rival Procter & Gamble was incredibly fierce. P&G landed some absolutely massive blows right after World War II. First, they dropped Tide laundry detergent on the market, which was devastating. It caused thousands of consumers to ditch Colgate's traditional soaps. Then, P&G added fluoride to their Crest and Gleam brands. That move temporarily knocked Colgate right out of the #1 toothpaste spot. It was a brutal battle for the bathroom cabinet, and it forced Colgate-Palmolive to aggressively restructure over the next few decades just to claw their way back to the top.
All right, Section 3, the global brand portfolio. A multi-billion-dollar modern empire.
$20.1 billion. That single staggering number represents Colgate-Palmolive's global revenue in the year 2024 alone.
And to generate that mountain of cash, the company employs roughly 34,000 people. We're talking about a workforce operating out of properties in over 70 countries, with subsidiary organizations spread across 200 countries worldwide. It is a massive global footprint.
Seriously, take a look in your bathroom cabinet tonight. You probably use a bunch of these brands every single day without even realizing they're all connected. It is way more than just Colgate toothpaste and Palmolive soap. We're talking Irish Spring, soft soap, Speed Stick deodorants, and household cleaners like Ajax and Murphy oil soap.
But what's really fascinating is how aggressively they've snapped up natural and premium brands to capture entirely new markets. They bought an 84% stake in Tom's of Maine for $100 million back in 2006 and scooped up the premium brand Hello Products in 2020. They even dominate the pet food space. If you buy Hill's Pet Nutrition or Science Diet for your dog or cat, yep, that is Colgate-Palmolive too. But, growing an empire isn't just about buying up everything in sight. It's also about knowing exactly what to sell off. Back in 2005, they made a highly calculated strategic move to dump their underperforming North American laundry detergents, brands like Fab, Cold Power, and Dynamo. They sold them off to focus entirely on the higher-margin stuff where they absolutely dominate: oral care, personal care, and pet nutrition. It was all about keeping that massive portfolio as profitable as possible.
Which brings us to Section 4, Ethics and Environmental Impact. The complexities of a global footprint.
When we objectively look at their corporate scorecard, the data paints a really complex picture. On one hand, you have PETA recognizing them back in 2011 for actively seeking alternatives to animal testing, though they do note that testing still happens in markets where it's mandated by law. But on the other hand, the Rainforest Action Network handed them a pretty harsh D- in 2023 for their track record on deforestation and palm oil. And then in 2024, Ethical Consumer gave them their absolute best rating for avoiding toxic chemicals, while simultaneously giving them their worst rating for climate change, plastic use, and palm oil. So it's a very mixed bag.
Today, the company is really wrestling with massive plastic pollution and emissions hurdles. In 2019, Break Free from Plastic actually cited them as a top 10 global plastic polluter. Now, the company has publicly committed to making all of their packaging 100% recyclable by 2025, which is great, but they face harsh criticism because they haven't made any explicit commitment to actually reducing the use of new virgin plastics. On top of that, a 2023 Planet Tracker report stated that the company is currently on track to miss its science-based climate targets by a factor of 7. The report specifically pointed out a lack of a clear strategy for handling their indirect emissions.
And look, operating in 200 countries brings some immense supply chain complexities. The company has had to navigate some really serious controversies over the years. For instance, a Global Witness report linked their palm oil suppliers in Papua New Guinea to human rights abuses and child labor. In 2011, they faced a lot of scrutiny for keeping the antibacterial agent triclosan in their flagship Total toothpaste, even while it was being withdrawn in other places over health and environmental concerns. And like a lot of global giants, they have to carefully navigate geopolitical crises. Following the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, they suspended imports, advertising, and capital investments in Russia. But they made the choice to continue selling essential health and hygiene products there.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to chew on next time you're washing your hands or brushing your teeth. How do we balance the convenience of our favorite everyday products with the global environmental responsibility of the mega companies that make them? We've seen how a tiny New York candle shop from 1806 used brilliant packaging innovations and ruthless mergers to become a $20 billion giant. But with that staggering scale comes intense, necessary scrutiny over plastics, supply chains, and climate goals. It really makes you look at that tube of toothpaste a little differently, doesn't it? Thanks for exploring the history and the data with me today. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.